metre gap between the perimeter edge and the start of the solar panels. 9 metres should be adequate for most vehicles.
Yes, but if you said it's going to be reduced to 6.
In the middle of the site is going to go from, there's sections which are going to be 6 and sections which are going to be 5 metres. But I would have thought if somebody was going to drive into the other field, they'd go around the outside. But if you go through the middle, there might be other things too.
Providing there is access all the way around.
Looking at the plan, there is.
Yes. Because I think on the original plan, beyond Julian Frost's field on the left-hand side of the site, it was reduced in width quite considerably, virtually down to the ring. So they wouldn't have been able to go round completely.
Have you got the site plan there?
Well, this,
Which shows the dimensions of the perimeter to the access.
Where's the access to it?
I haven't seen anything tonight because any road tracks.
It's online, but
There's Wall Street.
I don't know.
that's the one, isn't it? Yes.
Right.
On those annotations it says that the diameter of the width.
Yeah.
That's it. So
But this is to do with the new layout, is it?
Yeah. Can I just borrow that 2 seconds?
Yeah. Is that the one you brought tonight? Yes, it is.
There,
I think whatever they do, if the layout won't affect anything else, we just do it in the
This
same area.
is on 9 metres, so that is access all the way around
Yeah,
there.
it is.
It's
That's
not
what they're doing.
That's
That's
what
it. There is a question about where
It's
they
there.
have
Yes.
something
Where they're reducing it to 65 because there's a, looks like there's a room going down there.
Yes, so the ring,
Right through the middle.
Yeah. the ring runs alongside the,
Yeah. And then obviously goes through the middle of the site.
and there's,
So where's your man's view? Is it that one?
that one.
Yeah, so basically,
pretty important thing
he's got that.
many have had permission.
I know it
And
says
actually, the way they set this
9
up is
foot,
going to
it says
really
9 metre standoff
affect
on
lots of
line,
people.
including retained access along the lane.
The way they set this up, it's got to be done properly, so the lorries to come in
It
and
might not
out.
be
So there's
9
people in the
metres.
middle on there.
And then, sorry?
That's where the one town there's another one there. At the junction of that.
But presumably these guys that have got access
Well, they must have it.
have sent their comments to the planners.
I don't know, but
That's the next one.
Correct me if I'm wrong, we're not considering Malcolm's Point.
yeah.
Malcolm's Point will have already been dealt with at some
Well, they should
stage.
have done.
It should have done.
Yeah.
What we have to decide is whether we're extending the period from 25 to 30 years.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what we've got to decide.
Is there any problem with it?
Well, we did, actually it came up before, didn't it, about the extension of time?
Yes.
But this is obviously to do with a,
But at that time, they weren't talking about an amended layout. They were just simply asking about the
yeah,
extended
exactly,
time
now they've
last time.
sent this back in and now
So
they've
send it back
back
in with a new addition to it,
Yes, so it's
Called
really the amended
amending the
layout.
layout.
Well, unless it's going to extend it, I mean, if it's going to remain the same, just, it doesn't really, doesn't affect anyone, does it?
It'll be
Because aren't they lessening the amount of solar panels they're putting in there?
Well, we haven't got a before and after drawing, have we?
From their point of view, I presume it's more cost effective to have it over
Yeah.
an extra period.
They're not seeking to change the area that is being granted for the permission. They're just rejigging the alignment of the panels. So
It's
again,
an issue.
So really,
it's not an issue. The area has already been demarked. Are we happy to extend it? I'm not quite sure why, because obviously there's a huge cost implication, because if at 25 years, they have to shut that down. They would have to remove them and return the land to its original state. That's generally what happens. But they're asking for a further 5 years. Whether the panels will still be serviceable in 30 years, goodness knows. But
Well, it must be a financial
Have there been any objections to that?
Well, I would imagine that the return on some of the solar farms will be not as good as it has been,
No,
and perhaps that extra 5 years, which is
it does
another
mean perhaps very
another
slightly.
20% income.
And so coming back in 10 years' time for another 5
Have
years.
there been any
Yeah.
objections
Yeah,
to
but we won't.
from?
Well, I haven't got any objection.
No, I've got it.
Mr. Chairman, can I propose that we accept this planning permission?
On the basis that it had been previously agreed.
Yes,
Yeah.
correct.
Any objections? No. And on the next one, which is
This is the widening of the
Triple
existing
30.
access.
the widening, and to be honest, I would think we would support that on the grounds that it's going to reduce the impact on traffic in Wick Lane.
I will second
But,
that.
but actually, there was a point when we were looking at it before, Bob was looking at it, and he did make a valid point. He said, they haven't shown us where they're going to turn, how they're going to turn the lorries round. Yes, but they haven't put it on here, have they?
Perhaps that's why they want to modify the...
You wouldn't normally expect them to, but
Yeah,
the real
because I
issue
think
is
they should do. I mean, okay, widen the access, fine, but there is a point. They haven't, he felt that we ought
Maybe
to.
you want to reverse it.
Yeah.
but equally.
Well, you're not going to reverse out, are you? Where they, I mean, that's the whole point, isn't it, of having an in and an out? But where it doesn't actually illustrate how they're coming in.
But at the moment, if they didn't have a widened access, you would never get an articulated lorry into the site, and that would block Wick Lane while it was being unloaded.
It will block Wick Lane regardless of whether
Yeah.
they turn into the
That
site
would be
or
on the
not.
radio.
I have a concern that have they got permission from the landowners that they've marked these proposals out on? And also, the junction with Burton Road is just as much of a problem to turn because it's a sharp right-hand turn because they will come from East Brent. They can't come through the village.
But with respect, Malcolm,
What about the
we've
closure?
agreed in principle, we've already agreed, and it has been given planning permission to develop it, irrespective of how they were going to construct it. So at this stage, we can't turn around and say, but you can't do this because of that.
No, I'm just saying that the access off of Burton Road is a right-hand turn.
But that's not part of this planning application,
No.
Malcolm.
So I think
That should be addressed.
The comments for the county surveyor were to be considered further. That's what's online.
on the widening,
Yes, on the widening, yes.
well, I think I certainly would support widening of the access.
Yes.
Well, I think, yes, they've got to do that, otherwise they'll be able to.
Oh, it's a kind of,
To
But
facilitate
I think we should also
the
ask-
construction.
reduce the impact on Wick Lane.
And there is a lot of work to do on the rings on that access
Yes,
as
there
well. And round the site generally.
Otherwise they'll collapse.
So can we
Yeah.
To support that.
can we support that, please?
Yes.
Yeah.
No, the majority of the...
Do we want to make it, excuse me, but do we want to make a point about the no illustration of where actually they are turning? They've left it off.
Well, to be honest,
Just accepted it.
we've
I know
by
it's
default,
also-
we've already accepted it by agreeing that we would support the original planning application.
Maybe that's what they rejiggle the solar panels so that they've got a turn, so...
I would think so.
Okay.
That moves on to this final issue, which is the application for Bramble Farm is now going to appeal.
Well, we haven't got that, have we got that on?
No, the council have basically Sedgemoor have
Ah.
refused
You mentioned it,
to
didn't
grant planning consent, and the applicant has decided to appeal against that refusal. So what Sedgemoor are asking us to do is, if we do have any strong feelings regarding that appeal, and then we must do so by usually 21 days, or we can just say, no, we don't have any observations about it, and it's entirely a matter of you. Whether you think you feel strongly that Sedgemoor made the wrong decision in refusing it.
Sorry, Mr Chairman, presumably we originally refused it.
Yes.
We did,
Okay.
and Sedgemoor as well.
Do we know why Sedgemoor?
Yeah, that's what I'd like to know, why they
Just
refused
let's
it.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Then what should I think is what we did, or what we should do, is we should put a detailed, we should review it and put a detailed list of why we objected to it, to that's not only support our own decision but also to support that of Sedgemoor as well, because our views were obviously taken into consideration by them as well. And if they feel strongly about it, we should also write a proper report as to why we refused it, with proper planning.
We actually went out to the property, didn't we?
I think we did.
It's not Park Road.
Mm.
I think we did, but I can't remember it now. But that's why I'd like to review it.
Refer to our previous.
Mm.
Can't we simply refer to our previous...
Doesn't it come in every year? It came in every year.
The last, if I remember rightly, the last time we decided not to support it was on the grounds that the planning application had no details of what they were going to do. And it was written, the planning application was one of a hardship story and how he was going to become environmentally friendly with all these animals and all the rest of it. And basically live there.
Well, actually, I didn't think it was a hardship story.
Isn't
No, I think it was just...
Well,
But there was no details of what they were
and
going
then there
to
was
do.
like an old garage,
Yeah.
and they wanted to turn the garage
wasn't
into
that squatting?
Yeah.
And it was also part of
We bought it in a pub.
no, it was also part of didn't Mark Parish Council get involved with it
Yeah.
as well?
It was sent to them
Because it was
in
right
error.
on, it was right on the border.
Yeah.
But we went down to
Yeah.
Sedgemoor.
Did they want somewhere to live? And they put them in a
Somebody was
caravan?
squatting there or
Yeah.
something,
In a shed.
and
Well, it's
it was
very
a real
tidy now.
mess.
Yeah.
And they had kids there.
And Mark were objecting to it
Yeah.
as well because they became involved with it. So it's not. It wasn't a straightforward thing. It was convoluted.
Can
But
we
it
say
must have
that
been
our
for us to have gone out
objections
there.
to this planning application still stand?
Yes,
Let's leave it at that.
the simplest one. Yes,
Just to underline what Colin said, because we had a load of mock people here, didn't we,
Yes. They
complaining
came
about
to see
this
us. Yeah.
and wanting us to support them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They did.
that is the same case.
Yeah.
when I say it
And
was a
did they have
soft
a
story
banner
because
on
the
the
guy
road
had...
as well?
Oh, I don't know. I
Was
don't
there
know
what?
that.
Yeah, like a you know, like a notice board to actually state.
Yes, because that's right. The planning application wasn't made also by the landowner at the time. It was made by the guy that was actually squatting there on behalf of the owner of the property. So he passed it across to him. So it was a convoluted planning application. I'll be guided by everybody else,
Yeah,
but
me too.
That's how it started off, and then it came back later on and said that they had actually bought the property, and
Yes, he
we
did.
didn't know what was going on.
But he had no, if I remember rightly also, having bought the property, there was no deeds, he had no title deeds
No.
or anything to prove ownership,
Yeah.
and that's why it became a bit of a sob story.
And we didn't know how.
So I think Secretary's view is right, and we'll say our current, or John's view as well.
Objections still stand?
Yeah.
Previous application.
Thank you. Footpaths, Peter?
Yes, I'm still.
Oh, sorry, Bob. Sorry, I forgot about you, Bob.
We finished.
I've gone out to get all fish and chip cake
From our side, I'm still waiting for the big to Chrissy's.
Right, did you see the comment about the
Yes,
guy
I
who
saw
wrote
it.
there?
Yes.
Explain
Did you speak to him?
Mr. Jones,
Yeah.
whatever he is.
Mm-hmm.
Explain exactly what's happening and he's over the moon.
Is he? Right.
Yeah, he's showing us how to sheep.
Okay.
Gamballing.
So you want me to remind Chris he's still got an outstanding issue there.
Sorry?
He hadn't delivered the gate then, is what you're saying? Or he has?
Yeah, no, I told him that things take a while because we only meet once
Right,
a month and
yeah.
things are ongoing, but I still, you emailed me and said there was a gate on the way, but I've not seen it.
Okay. So Chris East gate.
Any other issues on footpaths, Peter? Any other issues?
None that I'm aware of.
Just one thing on the Ian Durston is going to do the job on the lower part of the. he
There's
says
two areas. There are two areas.
he's doing the lower part. The lower part is what you saw him, didn't you?
Well, I saw him like that, but he's been out of contact, and
It's not easy to get hold of.
since we last talked about it, and Colin added the other posts up at the top of the rise, we've heard nothing.
Is he aware of the upper ones?
Eh, dear?
Yeah. So I'm not sure he's aware of those at all.
Well, I don't know how he would have got it.
He's certainly aware of the lower one, but I'm not
I
sure.
chased him up on the lower ones, but has he been asked to do the upper ones?
No,
I see.
I've given him the okay on the lower ones. But,
All of those guys at Agbo, is it? The ones that work for Chrissy's, they're really good.
Cadogan, is it? Yeah. Well, as I say, I've authorised the guy to go ahead and do the lower one, but I'm not sure he's aware at all of the upper one.
Well, I thought as a result of the last meeting, when Colin brought up the problem of the other place, that he was going to be informed and asked.
Right, okay, I'm not aware of that.
But
Well,
it must be,
I
because
guess it's the lower
we
one.
discussed it, and I said, yes, we must do it.
Is that Rebecca's husband?
Yes, I guess it is.
Do we have any alternatives?
Let me just have a look at it.
We said
There's nothing on the last minutes about it.
Is there any alternatives to this guy?
Well, there are. I mean, people like Ian Morgan, for
No,
example.
he's as bad.
They generally are difficult people to deal with. They tend to be very disorganised. They don't keep very good diaries.
Fences.
Fences, really.
So
So,
he works for the Government Agency, which is his main job, and he's now picked up another job where he's got elevated.
so if he's looked at the upper job, and I ought to say to him, you've looked at it, you've probably had a quote for it. You've had a quote for the lower job, not the upper job. Is that what you're saying? We need to
Well,
go back to him and
I
ask him.
understood at the result of the last meeting when Colin
Nothing
brought up,
said,
well,
nothing,
we were going to do
nothing
something.
on December minutes at all.
Well, it was
Can you-
November or December, I don't know.
Perhaps just...
Can we chase him up?
That's right, I can say chasing on.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Highways, Malcolm?
There appears to be a pothole occurring at the junction with Station Road and Brent Street.
There's a letter, isn't there?
Have a look. Yes, sir.
I reported to Owen about Station Road,
Yes.
on the cottage there. Is anything developed from that?
Is this a different, because there seem to be so many issues coming up in Station Road. Is this the one that, I mean, they're resurfacing the bridge?
Yeah, no, it's beyond,
a different one.
just before you get to the cottage.
Okay.
Well, I mentioned this last time.
Yeah, that's right. And they've got a whole list of things that I've raised over there about Station Road.
There's two sets of traffic lights hanging there.
Yeah. And also there's, I think I mentioned to you, there's a pothole developing outside the lower gate of Overcast Hall.
Yes, I mentioned that to them.
You did?
I've got a reference number for that.
Thank you.
But they did say that they would look at it and see whether it met the criteria for that. But I presume nothing been done about that so far.
Not at the moment.
Okay.
What I don't know is the extent of the resurfacing works in terms of
Well,
length. Because if they might be doing just that.
they did say they were aware of significant problems in Station Road, and they were looking at the road generally. Whether that's going to pick up on all these different little points, I don't know.
And all the work that's taking place at the moment is in Han Road, which is the other side of the bridge.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
It sounds like we need to get what's his name. Just trying to figure out his name from the county.
Liam Gill.
Sorry.
Liam Gill.
Well, Liam Gill's one, but the guy who's the operating guy who drives around his little van, because he tends to go and visit all these things.
Ginger.
And I think perhaps he ought to just go and have a look, have a complete look at Station Road generally and Crooked Lane, because both there seems to be a problem with both. And come back to us and let us know what he sees as the two problems there.
Yeah, I think Station Road is far more important than Crooked Lane.
Yeah.
With the
Crooked
sheer
Lane's been
volume
very
of
quiet.
traffic going through it.
Yeah. I'll ask them.
Can I come in on highways? Last time we reported we had a loose curb stone outside Cynthia's. Cynthia said someone came along there and said it wasn't serious.
Yeah, we did.
Can we ask them to send us a letter to say to that effect in case somebody falls over it? Because if we had to do that on the village green, we'd have to carry out a
He did, he was looking down there, he was a chaplain, he was up.
Was he
I
from
think that's
highways?
the bloke they're talking about.
Yeah. And
Was
he
he
said, oh no, he said,
Was he actually from highways?
well, he was
He's
looking,
got a
he
Land
was
Rover,
going
yeah.
examining all the edge of their pavement, and I said, oh look, this one here.
So what you're asking for is a letter from the county to say that they are not prepared to
Take responsibility.
take responsibility for it.
That's right.
Have a
No,
tip over it a bit more.
you won't get a
Who
letter
did
like
the
that.
village green?
No, it won't be quite in that way. It won't be worded like that.
Who did the village?
Ask
Sorry.
them why they consider that not necessary.
Could I just ask one question in terms of highways? Opposite the Summer Farm, you've got the Reen, where you've got a pavement which appears to be collapsing into the Reen. There's a big area of metal that normally holds the ground back, which is falling into the water. We might need to flag it up to highways that it looks like there's a collapse taking place. Because it's getting steadily, it's not happening quickly, but it is getting worse each time we go past there. It's quite close to one of the BT manhole covers, so if it goes, it might take them with it.
I've made
It'll be on wireless.
One of the things that when I last spoke to the county highways just before Christmas, they said to me that one of the things they were trying to do is to get people themselves, residents, to report issues online. Because, and I said to them, that's all very well, but what about people who don't use online or really don't feel confident enough to be able to write, and he said, well, we're trying to move it away from the traditional you reporting it, I give you a reference number, to people reporting on a template spreadsheet. What the problem is, and then they'll come back to that person with a reference number and say, we will investigate it within 4 weeks or whatever, 3-4 weeks. That's what they're trying to get to. Because they're not as helpful now, I've noticed online, when I phone them now about problems, they don't seem to be quite as on the ball in terms of trying to make a note of the detail of it. They've simply said to me on a couple of occasions, well, if it's outside somebody's house, have they reported it? Which I find a bit odd. So I don't quite know where they're going with the highway reporting.
Oh, we have that letter from George.
Hmm?
Letter from George on Station Road.
We have, yeah. And that's, I don't know if that's a new issue, or that's one we already
That's the
know.
one mentioned.
Repairs to road service Station Road. Repair carried out opposite Acacia House before Christmas has broken up and requires to be done properly.
In other words, it's been done, not properly, in George's opinion.
So screw up all the emails and put on the whole.
But the issue is, would somebody like George be prepared to do things on
Well, he's not online, is he?
if he's not online, this is the whole point, isn't it? And I think that's just copying out, to be honest.
I think what we need to do, certainly with this, bear in mind George's letter, all the other problems we've had, I think we just need to get somebody out
Yeah,
and just say,
clearly
we've got to report on
there is
Station
a-
Road and Crooked Lane.
and we can throw that access, the junction access point, where it's perhaps collapsing on the footpath at the same time.
Yeah.
It's all part of
Yes,
Station
yeah,
Road.
I'll try and write to them as a comprehensive.
Okay, who did the village green?
I did it on two occasions.
On 2 occasions?
No, absolutely.
What's going on?
I came up on 22nd of December actually to see somebody, and I hadn't put it then. But when I did it when I was on the 7th of the last meeting, and basically it was very similar to what the previous one was, but the car park was okay, toilet block, there were no issues. There was some hedging beginning to need attention, and it was straggling a bit over by the trim trail, but it was generally fairly good, but very wet. When I came on December, there was quite a lot of water on the floor of the gents. But I've looked again today and it doesn't seem to be a problem. So whether I wonder whether somebody else has reported it, because I haven't done anything about it.
You have to tap on.
They might be off.
We did report the tap was,
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got here, tap had been leaking. But again, I've noticed today, it's not leaking at the moment. So it seems as if someone's been
Maybe somebody just turned it off or turned it on rather than forgot to
But
turn
there
it
were
off.
no green issues. There were no green issues apart from just being very wet. But that's all I can report on. Really.
Is this for December or
This is
January?
for December.
Right, okay.
John's the man for January. So I'm going to hand over to you, John.
Very much.
Okay.
Right, good.
Chair.
Annual report, yes, is... Sorry, Peter. Oh, lots of hands.
I was only just want to ask a question again. In terms of the toilet block, there is a little heater, which I think is in the storeroom. Is that turned on at the moment? Because obviously if we're heading into a cold snap, we have had it freeze up on previous occasions, so it might be worth just having that on a low setting.
Yes.
Does anybody understand this heater and the storeroom?
Future does.
I know where to hit it.
Could you be
We can
kind
go
enough?
check,
Could
see
you be
if-
kind enough to have a look in the daylight, Peter, please?
Yeah.
If you pass it. Right.
On the village green, is it appropriate now for me to give the report on the apparatus?
Yes,
Sports?
yes, please.
Well, John, Peter, myself and Colin put together our ideas and I've collated them here. Excuse me. These are we were asked to go through the whole list of Jubilee Sports, and these are what our recommendations are. Priorities for immediate action were that contact deals should be put on an entrance sign, and a telephone number, email address of a member, say of the PC. Chain link fence to the side of the area to be attended to. Tile safety surface on roundabout to be filled in, and check on the mats which are sinking. Spring rocker, new turf to be cut instead of levelling with topsoil. Safety surface around bench seats to be returfed. Chain net eye bolt fixings on Jubilee multiplay to be attended to and secure tiles on the same and get them cleaned. Trim tail swinging step posts, returf under the balance beam and step post, and shackles to the underside of steps to be replaced. Those were the main priorities. Other points we thought were not quite so urgent but should be attended to: fencing area to the top of the area by the swings, freestanding slide matting surface, timber decks on the roundabout, returfing on the safety surface around the bench seat, balance beam and step space to be returfed. One of our members felt that returfing was more appropriate than covering with soil, because soil just gets eroded and washed away. The Andy Selway should be contacted again to finalise the choice of colours that we agreed on in painting the bars on the roundabout. And another member suggested that we should find out what other parishes do with reference to the contact details on the entrance sign. Those are our findings. I can give you a copy or I can send you by email.
Send my email as well.
Okay.
So the real thing is, the priorities for the sound of it is turfing to a significant amount of area.
Yeah.
Is that something we can get Jason to?
Oh, well, Jason could do that. That's his area. I'm not sure, to be honest. We can ask him, and if he can't do it, he might be able to recommend somebody who can. So maybe Jason's the first port of call on that, I guess.
So if we ask Jason if he can do it,
Yes.
are you or somebody happy to point out the areas that want doing it, so that he can then put together a price?
Any of the other three want to say anything about this? Are you happy with that?
Yes, perfectly happy.
The only other thing, if you did want to put a name on the sign on the gate, I think we should refer to the notice board in front of the hall, and then because that's always kept up to date and it's always there, rather than have a specific name, otherwise we're going to have to change
It's out of
it.
date, possibly, yeah. So as you say, contact details, see notice board.
Yeah,
Yeah.
rather than a name.
In terms of the fencing that we also want as a priority, we're back to a fencing
Well,
plan.
The fencing one is the straining wire's gone, or it's let go. And if you could catch it out, it'll pull that fence out, no problem at all. I did have to throw a few sticks back over into Stuart's because he's had the fence, all his heads cut down, and a lot of it's fallen down between them. And they haven't come and cleaned it up, whoever chopped all the trees down, so I threw it back over the fence.
John, do you want to say something?
Yeah, give that
I didn't
to
hear it.
Richard.
Shout.
Want that?
Okay.
You keep that copy.
Yeah.
Thank you.
One of the other points is about the timber decks on the roundabout splitting. I'm not too sure how significant that is, but certainly the timber decks were quoted to be re-stained by Andy Selway. So, which comes first, chicken or the egg? Should we get the timber decks sorted before they're painted or not?
What sort of timescale?
Well, I mean, there we are.
It's the wrong time of the year to paint them anyway.
Yeah.
It's the wrong time of year, but the thing is that I haven't looked, I'm going to look on them this month, but they say the decks on the roundabouts need attention, and we've turned around and said we're just about to have them redecorated, so it doesn't seem particularly logical. I'll go and have a look at it when I put in my report this month.
If you would do that, John, and then we would need to have a recommendation.
And Andy Selway certainly is not going to go and paint anything this month. I don't suppose he will get up there until we get some decent weather in the spring. Then we can go up there and decide with him what colours we're going to paint it.
So fencing, is it something we can do, or do we need to get one of the Ians to look at it?
Sorry?
Do we need to get Ian to look at that fence, or is it something
Well,
we
it
can do?
needs some tools that I've not got to pull on that.
It needs a fencing. It needs a
Needs a
fencing.
fencing tool.
Could you you contact Ian and do
Might even
that?
need a new wire threaded through.
I should think so.
If you could do have a look at that,
I
please.
do the fencing as well at the same time.
Okay. Well, thank you for doing that.
And your emails will be wrong.
Oh, well, yeah.
And I'll ask Jason if he can help with the turfing side of things.
Yeah, and make contact perhaps with Brian in the first instance.
Yeah, okay.
And then we can come up with a price. Yes, Colin.
Who's going to carry out the shackles, the, what was the other one? The chain,
Net eye bolt.
net eye bolt.
Mm.
Can we ask GB to do those two particular
We ought to
items?
get a price for. Is
I
it?
don't think they need doing. I lifted them all up and I had a look at them. They're rusty, yeah, but there's still plenty of meat on them.
Right.
I mean, you can change them by all means, but really there's no load bearing weight on them because they're all down on the main chain.
Right. Is it worth asking GB at the next inspection to play, just have another look at them?
Well, if he turns up, I wouldn't mind going there and
Okay.
Mm.
Yeah, and perhaps you could liaise with Peter.
Give him our priorities.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and but liaise with Peter on that particular
So we
issue.
should reduce the list.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right. I'll ask
Okay.
GB to
Well, thanks for doing that, because I think it's important that we try and get that
yeah.
list reduced in terms of repeat
Yeah,
items.
yeah. Because some of them have been like that for 4 or 5 years. Yeah.
Anything on flood mitigation, Peter?
Sorry?
Anything on flood mitigation?
Yes, there is. Brian was at the local hostelry talking about this, that and everything else. We met a chap that lives down opposite West Road, a Mr. Simon Hurst. And he was talking about, he's probably been flooded a couple of times. Brian said, well, he was talking about drainage and whatever, said that he should speak to me. And I went down and saw him. He contacted me, I went and saw him, and he's got a problem with the main ream that runs past his property. Well, at some time they built a patio that extends over the ditch. It's quite a wide ditch, a good metre wide, and somebody's put in a pipe that's 3 inches in diameter. And he says he gets a lot of trouble when he gets a lot of rain on the hill. He has to rod it through. So it's okay if the far side's empty. He said he can get the water, but he can't get the water, but it wouldn't be mind taking the village pump down and pumping from one side to the other. But really it's not our problem, it's
Is it on his land?
that's right. But I told him I would back him on the fact that he's got a problem with a neighbour that refuses to do any ditch maintenance, green maintenance. And I wondered as to whether we could get Matthew Hall or we could get it out to people that it's their responsibility But he is in contact with Matthew Hall, and Matthew Hall has promised him something that I know not what. But I said I'd bring it up at this council meeting that I'm not prepared to go down there and use the village pump. Okay, if there's an emergency, yeah, we'll go down and help him out.
That's what it's for.
If we're on standby every time we get water down, he should rip up his patio and put in a thinking,
Was it him that put the patio in?
I don't know as to whether he did or not. But it's on the property, this garden area, has been built over a reed. You know, unless he digs a ditch around it.
What's it, I mean, do you want me to raise it with Matthew Wall?
Well, what I'd like the council to do is say that we've got a problem. We've spoken with Mr. Hurst, and Matthew's promised him something. What is it that he's promised him, so that we can eradicate that from our inquiry? Also, can Matthew get because he's got a problem with neighbours down there who refuse to do any green maintenance, is there any way that the Brew Drainage Board can stamp their authority on these?
Well, I think that is absolutely right.
Sorry?
I think that's absolutely right. We've got to make use of the drainage board to use some authority.
Exactly.
And it would be interesting. We'd have to ask them to do that and see what the response is.
Well, they spend an awful lot of our money digging out all the ditches around here, and then you get a little blip like this.
What's the address of Mr. Hurst?
What's the name of the house?
Hazeldean.
Hazeldean, Burton Road.
His surname is Hurst, H-E-A-R-S-T.
As in...
No, that's it. No, there's a copy in it.
Oh,
Not H-E-U-R-S-T.
Right, okay.
Okay, thank you, Peter. You did mention, was it last time or the time before, something with the something to do with the pump itself?
yeah, I've not got around to that.
That's pending.
She wants me indoors doing maintenance.
It's pending, thank you, Peter. Right, okay. Parish surgery, who was it?
John and I were here this afternoon. We had one couple came in, didn't we, John, from Station Road, really talking about the affordable housing, basically, and really just reiterating what we'd heard previously. They were obviously very anti, and want to know what. I think they thought we might be discussing it tonight, but they weren't sure. When I told them we weren't actually, then they decided they weren't going to come. So.
Were they anti-affordable housing or just
I think
No, they were
very
concerned, I
pro.
think, and I think we were able to give them quite a lot of encouragement about what is happening, telling them it's all in ideas in the mind of God at the moment. Nothing's been fixed. Actually, I think they went away. They went away very cheerful and happy with what we said to them.
Brian?
Have you missed out the D from the annual report? Or was I asleep?
Sorry.
The D.
Oh, the annual report that you had in the circulation folder. Yeah, that went round last time, didn't it?
Yes.
Everybody got a chance to look at that.
Yes.
I mean, it obviously follows on from what you've been doing, right? Anyway.
So,
Thank you.
I guess the police didn't attend.
No. And based on recent communication from Tony J at Wendon, or was Wendon, he's now, what is it, next village down Bleedon, he seems to think that we're not going to get any police presence at all in the future. But he was talking about primary meetings, I think, wasn't he, rather than surgeries.
You should hopefully have had an email from Salk, because they'd be in touch with the PCC asking about attendance of police officers at parish council meetings, and had a less than positive response from the PCC, basically saying they'll be there if they can, but don't expect them to be there, and it will be a more unlikely event than a likely event.
Yes.
And yet the lady that's the police commissioner said in her newsletter that I read, in that pink folder, they are now actively trying to engage the local community, or worse to that effect.
They may be, but they're not actively engaging them through the parish councils.
No.
Talking about affordable housing, I'm still getting a lot of grief. Recently we all received a letter about a presentation
Yesterday.
by the about the development of the end of the village. They're all saying this end of the village that we should support that so that they don't build down here. I said it's nothing to do with affordable housing.
I know it's not on the agenda, but did anybody around the table attend yesterday?
Yes, I'm going to say something actually, because I think it's disappointing that it is really quite an important presentation to this village. It's moved forward, they've had 2 or 3 presentations. It's become an important topic. We have discussed it many times. We've got our own opinions either for or against. And we had about 30 people from the parish here to attend the presentation. And I would say no more than it is very disappointing that only 3 members of the parish council bothered to turn up, which is disappointing support or demonstrating disappointing support for members of this village.
Yeah, I would
I think
support.
that's a bit naughty, John, really.
I don't. I think he's
Well,
absolutely
no,
dead
no.
right.
No, because some people, I was at home, but I actually had to go to hospital in the morning, and I couldn't come.
I went to work and I came
And,
here.
you know, there are people that would come if they could, but you
There's
can't
more
just
than
assume
I
that nobody
purposely stayed
comes.
away.
I think that's
thought it was
really-
upsetting everyone.
It is naughty.
I don't think it's naughty, but
Well, it is
you've
very
given
nice.
it. No, it's not,
I can't,
Cynthia.
but
No,
yes, it is.
it's not, Cynthia. You've explained
Yes,
why
okay.
you were unable to go, and which we accept, wholeheartedly accept that.
Well, I don't expect you to tell me off.
We're not
I think-
telling you off, Cynthia.
I think also the notice was short, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Very short.
It came
I got mine on actually Monday.
Mm.
We all got it at the same
No,
time.
the point is that just to, I know we're going to talk, but we may as well talk. They gave a really good presentation on the development itself and showed the care they were taking. And strangely enough, and I think there were a lot of people from the village, weren't there, Bob?
Yeah, 38.
Strangely enough, nobody said, correct me if I'm wrong here, that the development was rubbish and should not go ahead. No one said anything about that, which I thought was very positive. What people were concerned about is the biggest nut that we are trying to crack is what their proposals are for the Fox and Goose Junction. And unfortunately, their representative was weak, and they missed, and it wasn't until the 11th hour, correct me if I'm wrong here, Bob, when the lady, I've forgotten her name, Hannah, stepped in to say, well, of course, nothing is written in stone yet. These are merely proposals, and they have to be agreed with Somerset Highways. And but the suggestions that came up and comments, I felt, were quite unreasonable in some aspects.
True.
And we as a parish council are going to have to make a decision on this, and we need to get it right. That's why it was very important that as a parish council we make ourselves fully aware of what is now going to happen with the consultation process with Somerset Highways, because
That's right.
that's the nub of the matter.
That's where we should be involved.
and that, well, no, you should
Not
be
going
involved.
along there, turning up and saying the parish council is supporting the
No,
development.
No, we're not. No one said that. We were there, information finding, but we were listening to the comments of people that were there and their concerns. And would you support that, Bob?
I was going to say, I think in a way, and it was we were getting information from obviously the developers. There wasn't a lot new that came from them. They hadn't briefed us on at the previous meeting. But I think it was useful hearing the views of the village, and I would guess, I mean, we had, all the seats were filled, we had standing room at the back, and it was, I would have thought we were probably 40-ish of the people who actually saw the presentation, and obviously there were people coming in and out at the end as well. But I thought it was useful. I mean, there was a lot of comment, as Colin said, in terms of people's views, particularly in what could and couldn't be done on the A38. And as we said, I mean, it's ultimately not going to be down to us or the residents as to what happens there. That is something for the experts to come up with a plan, and then we see where it goes from there. But I thought it was a useful meeting. It was interesting. Even those who weren't positive did comment at the end of the presentation that they felt the presentation had been very useful, and they felt that it had been put across in a way that they could understand. They picked up on issues to do with drainage as well, which was well explained.
Very well.
And I thought they did do a reasonable job of getting the message across to
Am
the
I
rest of the
right
village.
in assuming that if, for whatever reason, some county turned it down, for whatever reason, I said, no, it's a non-starter, the houses will not be developed?
Well, that's where we come in as a parish council.
Well, no, because there has to be a benefit, doesn't there?
No, the benefit for the village is the additional housing and people coming into the village and increasing the community. That's the benefit to the village. Well, you say that, but it is.
Well, if there was some affordable housing there, it would be there.
No, what I'm saying is that can they get planning permission for just building those houses on the grounds that Colin just alluded, or do they have to have a demonstrable benefit to the community, albeit affordable housing or improvement to the junction or some other?
Under the planning policy that they're going for, there has to be a community benefit beyond just the houses.
Yes,
So
which
they
is
would
the
have,
junction.
which in this case is the junction at the moment, or in other places it could be the affordable housing, or it could be something else, but there has to be something tangible.
It's not just the fact that they're going to build houses which will increase the community, blah, 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 that some of us would welcome, is not a material support for planning under that particular application.
It's a material support, it's a material support, but it's not enough to get them over the fact that they are outside the village development boundary. It's the additional bit that they need to bring to the party.
But the key thing that we as the parish council have to recognise though is once it goes to formal planning, we will have to look very carefully at that planning application. And I guess at that stage they will have had better ideas on the A38 junction.
Well, that I think was made, one spoke to them, I think that was made abundantly clear yesterday, but it's also clear is that they have now moved to such a situation where they're in a position fairly shortly to be able to put in planning application, and that will be done now in relatively short order, maybe within the next month or 6 weeks.
I think without putting words in somebody's mouth, that Bob is prepared to represent the parish on that particular examination of that plan.
I mean, the position that I will be taking is I will be a parish council member, as the rest of you are, for that particular application. I will not be sitting on the district planning committee.
Right.
So
Okay.
I will be with the rest of you discussing that planning application when it comes in.
And is it something that we ought to have a working group? I know we have to decide as a council, but would it be better to have a more...
Personally, I think we need to be as open and transparent as we possibly can be on this, and so far we have been. I think if we started to have working parties, I think there will be some in the village that will think something is going on behind a closed door. We're safer to deal with it as we do normally.
Claire?
Mr. Chairman, can I ask Bob? Mr. Chairman alluded to the fact that we may well be discussing the planning application, which seems fairly straightforward. But can it be made, if you like, i.e. the benefits that we get, can it be made a condition precedent on granting this application if we do decide that the Fox and Goose Junction is it goes hand in hand with it? Do you see what I mean? In other words, no Fox and Goose, no housing.
Talking to the agent.
I'm just asking
As
myself.
part of the planning application, there would have to be a section 106 legal agreement.
Yes.
That would have to have within it a clause which tied the Fox and Goose Junction to this application. The argument that will be when the delivery takes place. Often it would be, and the government tend to push towards having things like that completed pre-occupation of the properties. So there would be a negotiation around that, but we would have to make sure that we flag up as a parish council what our requirements are, so that Sedgemoor know at least where we're coming from. Ultimately, the legal agreement will be between Sedgemoor and the developers and highways, and all three of them will have to sign up to it.
But
Thank you.
at that point, I think we need to reinforce that particular issue. Okay. Right. I know we digressed, but I think it was important, so I don't think it was on the
Well,
agenda.
it was actually.
Was it?
A different
Okay.
section, matters 8B, and any further developments,
Yeah.
timescales. So it was on there, so that's why I didn't.
Excuse me.
No, sorry.
It's just in a different order, that's all.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Current matters.
current matters from myself. Basically, there were three things. First of all, we mentioned at a previous meeting that we would perhaps tackle perhaps some general principles of our operation and CPD issues at each meeting. And what I decided this time was probably, in conjunction with Richard, was that we should have a look at disclosable pecuniary interest. Because this is the one thing where councillors can come to grief very seriously. You don't understand fully what it is. I've actually done a little sheet for you just so you put it in your files. But basically, 2011 Act created a criminal offence in respect of a member's failure to register and disclose certain interests and limit personal involvement in any discussion or decisions based on that discussion. So that's not very well worded actually. 2634 and Schedule 4 of the 2011 Act, known as the Localism Act. The regulation applies to both members, elected and co-opted. There is no official definition of a pecuniary interest, but in principle applies to any matter where a member may have a financial interest, benefit or disclosable interest. Failure to disclose an interest will result in a criminal offence if proven. And I think that's the important part of it. I'm not aware of any cases where it has so far got to that stage, but certainly there will be in due course, I'm sure. The legal requirement for the parish council is to adopt a code within the overall code of conduct, and from July 2012 Article 2 of the Localism Act, and we do have that. We have a code of conduct which actually has that particular pecuniary interest definition within it. The principal authority, in this case Sedgemoor, is responsible for receiving, investigating and deciding on a code of conduct complaint in this respect, which relate to members in their area. So if, for example, somebody in the village made a claim that a member of the council hadn't disclosed a pecuniary interest and should have done, their first port of call would go to Sedgemoor District Council, and it would go through the conduct complaints area of the council through Melanie Wildman, Managing Officer. I've written here the most likely reasons for disclosure in this council are payments to members and planning or development interests, but there can be potentially others. And this is one of the reasons why in the past we've kind of almost, encouraged people to remove from the room even if it's only a small payment being made, because actually, by not doing so, is committing a criminal offence potentially. So it's important that we do have that very much in our mind because at the end of the day, one of the worst things that can happen to this council or any other council is to have a case of pecuniary interest against one of its members. I think that would be very serious and very unwise to go down that track. So I'm just going to distribute that around to you, so everybody's got a copy of this is partly taken from South, partly taken from Sedgemoor, and partly taken from Silver. So hopefully it's something we'll bear in mind when we look to whether we want to disclose an interest or not. That's a good basis on which to work.
Right, looking at it from another point of view, what happens if a member of the public slags off one of us to the clerk, to you?
Yeah. Well, they just simply get directed to Sedgemoor District Council. If they've got a complaint, it would go to Sedgemoor.
Okay.
I wouldn't even deal with it at all. I would just simply move it to the Sedgemoor District Council.
Right.
And in most cases, it would be Melanie Wellman who would be the person who would be the starting point for that complaint. But of course, any complaint would have to be proven. There have to be good evidence.
I believe, or I think it has to be clear objective evidence.
Absolutely, it has to be evidence, like all things in law. Now, two other things.
No, I was just going to ask Owen, is it possible to punch hole these before you
I could do so. If you give them back to me, I'll punch on before the next meeting.
No, I can.
Even my little punch. Stationery.
I'll let
Nail and
Reggie
hammer.
Sharpen your teeth.
There's two other things. If I they come under this section, affordable housing. We've got Duncan and Esther coming at the next meeting. You probably saw from the email. They wanted a non-public meeting on this occasion, and so I suggested the afternoon of the next meeting, which is the 1st of February at 2:30. So Duncan and Esther will come and they'll update us on matters relating to Station Road and any other matters that are pertinent to the affordable housing.
First
2:30.
2:30.
2:30, yeah.
Do we know why they want?
Well, they've gone away after their last session here. They went away and they've done some more.
They've revised their
I
appreciation.
think they've probably been talking to developers, possibly. I really don't know what the actual content of their.
When you send out the next agenda, can you stick it on the bottom?
An 8-man one.
Yeah, I'll do that for you. Yeah, 2:30. And the other thing on that is the adoption of the kiosk, telephone kiosk.
Yeah.
Been quite a lot of chewing and throwing on the BT actually on this one. The end result is I've now asked Caroline if she can now send title deeds to BT. They have identified our need and they have taken us off the removal list for the time being. So we're not going to suddenly get BT visiting and taking down the telephone box. It is on hold at the moment until Caroline's application has been sought.
Can I ask, what are we going to do with it when we've got it?
We haven't decided yet because we don't own it.
Village
What's
chair.
that got to do with it?
Well, we have had a brief discussion, but we haven't had a formal discussion.
Caroline needs to approve anything, of course, that happens to that telephone box.
So I suspect, I would say defer it to the next meeting, on the next agenda.
That's fine. I'd just like to know what you're going to do with it, because
And then we can move around the country.
probably put a defibrillator in there.
The one difficulty with BT is that originally they said that if it was on public land, they would actually maintain the electricity supply or the cost of the electricity. If they are not prepared to do it, it's on private property. So Caroline might have a small cost of electricity for maintaining it in the future.
Yes.
But I don't know how that works.
Yeah.
Cheaper than the whole.
How many people can you house in a telephone
Yeah,
box?
and we also have the council
Library.
library.
So that's all from
Music room. Concert hall.
If you've taken note of what's been going on elsewhere, the usage of many of these is quite...
The library's on.
No.
It's quite a lot.
Ladies only.
Even cafes.
Is it?
And wine bars.
Oh.
And Caroline will be the driver, I think, or key driver. But there are all sorts of potential issues. Right.
correspondence.
Correspondence,
Well, obviously, we've discussed the operational playground inspection, which doesn't show anything new on it from last time, not surprisingly. We've also had a letter from Crossville, which I think I sent out to everybody, with a reply from John at Crossville Motor Services, which didn't seem to be terribly encouraging, but there may be a more positive slant on it than I was able to get from it.
Bob seemed to indicate last time we talked about it that it was not done and dusted, or am I thinking wrongly?
Yeah, I've heard no further updates on that as yet.
Okay.
But it's not, definitely no, it's still...
Right.
Definitely. What I noticed in Birmingham, Bob might well know, there seemed to be another local bus company, and there was something Coast or Coast something.
Coast 20.
Coast 20, what
That's
it
part
is,
of-
were going through Beaumont Sea. So who are they? What are they doing?
That's First Western.
Hmm?
It's first group. It's just a different style of bus. They ran out of their normal paint and they've got brown paint.
No,
No cars on
We had the email, which obviously Peter alluded to earlier, about from Tim Griffith Jones about the gate. And we've seen the letter from James Healy. She's talking about the government's financing.
So
Okay, so it's all okay.
payments,
Payments. There are the statutory payments of 1,408, that's in line with previous months and also agreed in April 2016. These are the 4 payments of tax, clerk, JP Mayo and GB Sports. The variable payments this month are decision power for website management,